the 9th of February. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody had a good day. It's 2022. We got oodles and oodles and oodles of news to get through. It ain't gonna do itself, so let's fly at it. What should be the sentence for these criminals, I wonder? They allowed the A-10 Warthog to shoot dirty bombs all over the world. Taiwan end the ban on food. We got to keep that one now. From a nuclear disaster area. It's just stupid. It's a stupid headline. Taiwan end ban on food from a nuclear disaster area. Way to go, Taiwan. As soon as they got into power, they're like, boop, let's get rid of the ban. This is pretty crazy. The Liberal Democratic Party in Japan has approved a resolution condemning 5 former prime ministers. Like, do they really think that, and the false information was saying that children got sick because of Fukushima, and they're like, you have no evidence. Which one is more crazier? The fact that the Liberal Democratic Party considers himself better than 5 former prime ministers of the country. To the point where they have a resolution condemning them. How does that work? You take away their pensions or what? For disseminating false information, which is obviously not false. You had 4 meltdowns and the fuel pools, decades of reactor cores meltdown, for goodness sakes. So Japan's official policy is no nuclear accident happened. And if it did happen, there was no adverse side effects, because Japanese are better than everybody else on the planet, Dana. The Policy Research Council Board. The resolution criticizes the prime ministers for sending a letter. Just so criminal, eh? They sent a letter. I can't believe that. Give them the death penalty. To the European Union, stating many children are suffering from thyroid cancers. Now, the whole medical institution, not the whole one, I guess, but 99.9% of them will only talk about cancer to the thyroid. The thyroid takes the radiation and does what it does with normal elements, is it converts them into hormones. And hormones, by the way, are... Without the hormones, your body can't function. So there's around 1,800 illnesses that will arise because of that, not just cancer. It accuses them of fostering groundless, but they had multiple nuclear meltdowns, for goodness sakes. They picked up 60 million one-ton bags of radiation in just 3% of a small area, compared to the 14 prefectures that were irradiated. The resolution calls for the government to improve the way it disseminates information to prevent rumors. Nuclear meltdown is now a rumor? Did I just wake up and find myself in the twilight zone or something? A Fukushima Prefecture government expert panel, which was Geraldine Thomas and Robert Dale, and there's a bunch of them, right? We've covered them over the years endless times. These are notorious cranks for the nuclear industry. A Fukushima Prefecture government expert panel. Oh, and even worse, United Nations, which is 193 militaries. scientific committee, there's a laugh and a half, have stated that thyroid cancer diagnosed in residents at the time of the accident cannot be attributed to radiation exposure. It's an interesting thing to frame it that way, at the time of the accident, because cancer is latent. It usually happens years later. Cannot be attributed to the radiation exposure. But if you're at the site or close to it, within 20 miles of it, you could have got 10 sieverts of radioactive fallout doses. This is why they have shelter in the place orders for 30 miles away. So they're saying that any illnesses can't be attributed to radiation exposure in a nuclear wasteland. Gotcha. Wow, man. There's people on this planet that is, when you think about it, it's scary just being in the same city with these types of people. Discernible excess of thyroid cancers caused by the radiation exposure are unlikely. Or over the entire lifespan, the United Nations Scientific Committee on the effects of the atomic radiation said in a report it released in March of last year. So, these are the same people that tells the world they're humans too, by the way. United Nations Scientific... Well, the word United Nations, they got 1,000 subsidiary companies. Their New World Order, Grossi is the president of planet Earth, in case people are confused about how this actually works. It is extremely regrettable that a former prime minister would... there's 5 of them, not just one, would distort and disseminate information, even though it has clearly been shown that there is no link to the radiation from Fukushima multiple nuclear meltdowns. The resolution, so let's go back to that one. The resolution criticizes the former prime ministers, with an S, for sending a letter to the European Union stating that many children are suffering, and they just don't, apparently, according to these people, anything you can get is thyroid cancer. You can't get anything else. Oh, but, and just 2012, they were at this hardcore Fukushima superhero, because your parents are no longer heroes, or your grandparents, unless they wear a cape, of course. Tell kids that the arch enemy is bad reputation. Fight against fools and sloppy people. This is what they were saying also just after Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the USA, right? Child's risk of cancer from radiation is 10 to 100 times higher than an adult. That's interesting. And the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Committee, wants radiation exposure limits 100 times higher than the crazies, aka the environmental protection agencies. And that study is based on Chernobyl's nuclear meltdown. Says children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. Huh? Not thyroid cancer? That's crazy. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. And Japan has a limit of 100 becquerels a kilogram of cesium-137, because uranium and plutonium don't exist, just like the illnesses in the children, Dana. Gotcha. Thyroid abnormalities in 55% of the Fukushima girls tested, age 11 to 15. That's not bad, is it? They only found thyroid tumors in 55% of teenage girls. That's pretty normal. Fukushima girls have 3 times more thyroid than sissy boys, because boys are afraid of tumors, apparently. And 79% more medium-sized tumors than boys. Or are girls just being greedy, wants all the tumors for themselves? Maybe that's what it is. I should have thought about that earlier before I wasted everybody's time. Just 0.8% of children in 2001, Japan's control group, had thyroid tumors, and 36% now in a Fukushima study. 35% of young people tested have thyroid tumors. Now, it's 35.8% of the Fukushima children. Instead of being 1 or 2 per million, it's 13,646 out of 40,000. So, according to what we just learned about Japan in the story, that building is not real, this one is. Now, according to me, that's the real building, this is the fake one. I don't know, because the media said it, and who am I? Just a lowly slave on planet Earth. Now, if you believe United Nations version that there was no adverse side effects from radiation, and that 55 countries banned the food in 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima, and that this farmer is harvesting rice right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. So the question is, why did you pick up millions and millions and millions of 1-ton bags of radiation and then let a farmer grow food right alongside of them for market? And then the same day they said there was no adverse effects, they found rockfish that exceeds the legal limit of the cookies by 10 times the legal limit. 5 times, that's 500 becquerels a kilogram. Now, there is no safe level. There's a legal level, but there's no safe level. We got a little poll tonight. Hello, poll. Seems as Taiwan only checks Fukushima food imports in the future for gamma, and specifically just iodine 131 and cesium 137 and 134. I was wondering, should they also check for beta, alpha, and neutrons, isotopes? Or am I just being a drama queen? While the Japanese government has remediated, I'll try that again. On Tuesday, the Japanese health officials said they would halt all consignments of black rockfish. So if the rockfish are over acceptable limits, then all the other fish have to be too. They're all eating the same stuff. While the Japanese government has remediated human-occupied areas by removing the topsoil, forest and the rural areas, which makes up the most part of the country, have not been treated. You can't decontaminate something by taking up topsoil after a nuclear accident. It's absurd. It's like never mind. Leaving an abundant reserve of dangerous radioactive isotopes in the surface soil layers. The contaminated waste washes down to streams when it rains and enters the food web. Get it together, Dana. The plant is partially flooded. Liquefaction of radioactive water. And about 150 tons of contaminated water is pumped out every day. 150 tons is what a garden hose can do in 24 hours at 20 psi. Most garden hoses are at 30 to 50. The strategy is not sustainable. Officials say there are already more than 1,000 large tanks on the site. But they had 1,000 tanks in 2014, 1,000 tanks in 1,200 in 2015, 900 in 2017. And you can go back through my playlist. You'll see videos on the tanks where I go way down the rabbit hole with the documentation. Or not, whatever. Work on drilling the tunnel has been delayed until June because of opposition. That's the first time we heard that narrative, by the way. And we read and cover everything. We don't take time off around here. The plant's operator, which is TEPCO, but TEPCO went bankrupt and was nationalized right away by the government. So the government, the plant's operator, believes that releasing the water into the sea should be safe. Should be? Well, first off, if you fill up the tank at 2.2 sieverts an hour, it's 1.4 million. 1,400,000 sieverts. That's enough to kill you quicker than I can blink my eye. And the tanks are not thick enough to shield you. It needs to be several dozens of meters thick to shield you from those kinds of numbers. And so you couldn't actually build another tank there if one of the tanks were full. And you couldn't get, because you can't get back on the site, see? So the tanks are meant to make you think they didn't kill the Pacific Ocean, because you can fill up all the tanks each day normally 6 times with the water they need to cool the reactors. And when they melt down, you're looking at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So claiming that 150 tons, a garden hose, and 4 melted reactor buildings total, a garden hose split up 4 ways. So the math doesn't really hold up when you do it, does it? Believes that releasing the water into the sea should be safe, as the contaminants would be heavily diluted, spread around, because you can't destroy it. And radioactivity in the area would quickly return to background level that it hasn't seen pre-atmospheric weapons testing. If you insist on the safety of treated water, why don't you spray it in your garden or dump it in a river flown into Tokyo? Which is the same fishermen, the same narrative that they've been saying for a couple of years straight. That's the only narrative they'll quote. That's their argument, and they're sticking to it. South Korea's nuclear future is a new election battleground. Think about the statement they just made there. The nuclear future is, if you're not pro-nuclear, you ain't getting elected. I got to do some slurping for a second. Hang on. Let's keep it rolling. Here we go. Oh, so much to get through. So South Korea's new, they got an election coming up this next week. And if you're not pro-nuclear, what are you doing running for president? South Korea's leading presidential puppets are offering diverging visions on the future for nuclear power. Though both agree the nation must soften its plans to phase out the power source to make climate change. Climate change. The front runner, which is caused by radioactive fallout. So Fukushima radioactive fallout model, that's only 20 days of radioactive fallout. Imagine if you let the model run for another 20 days. It covers the whole planet in radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second from the bottom of the ocean floor to the upper troposphere, an invisible plume of energy. Kills all the bacteria in your forest. This is why you have massive forest fires, because the forest doesn't break down into the typical litter that we're used to, right? Through millions of years. The front runner, Lee Jae-myung from the ruling Democratic Party, is that the left, right, center, far left, far right, extreme left, extreme right, nihilistic left, nihilistic right, Pol Pot, Mao left or right or far left or extreme. Party doesn't want any new atomic plants. Ooh, you ain't going very far. But it's open to operating reactors that are currently under construction. If you don't give him a bone, the industry will cut your throat. He'll be assassinated quicker than Kennedy. The candidates are reassessing policies on nuclear power at a time when nations from China to France. So if somebody else is doing it, you got to do it too, is it? It's a good thing they're not jumping off a cliff. And don't call nuclear a less polluting form of energy, all right? Any outcome could reshape, the country's the decarbonization strategy is part of the Paris Accord to keep nuclear alive. Nuclear is the reason for climate change and the death of the planet and an extinction level event that is playing out in front of all the blind people on our planet, which is the majority. In fact, like waking up is kind of like death for a lot of people. Quoting Alan Watts, of course. But waking up for a lot of people is like, what? Fox is lying, CNN is lying, they're all controlled opposition, they're all scumbags. Nah, I can't be. Don't tell me that. Don't ruin my day. Go back to sleep. Thank you. Near-term support needed for other zero-carbon technologies, such as renewables. Long-term views on nuclear, however, strongly affect the level of future renewables. If you put all your eggs in a nuclear basket, all you do is destroy your country. Nuclear makes up 29% of the South Koreans' power generation. Under the Moon administration, the installed capacity for nuclear is projected to fall 19 gigawatts by 2034 from the current 23.3 gigawatts. These are poison disease factories, these facilities. You call them nuclear power plants, but if you do the research, they're disease factories for the entire planet and for 8 million species. They're the death of our planet. Even without a meltdown, they release so much radiation all day long. It's staggering. It's horrific. Besides permanently turning off the nation's two oldest reactors with extending their planned lifespan, Moon also scrapped projects to build new units. Bless his heart, right? Or her heart. After presidential candidate Ahn Cheol-soo is taking a more aggressive stance on nuclear, really supporting small nuclear reactors, which are faster and easier and cheaper to build than conventional nuclear plants. You can leap tall buildings, and they're faster than a speeding bullet, I tell you what. And, oh yeah, they don't exist. Like, just crazy, huh? Cheaper, easier, faster. You can't keep up with the same lie over and over. A giant fusion reactor, of course, you get better chances of getting a fusion reactor up and running than the small modular reactors, and zero chance of the fusion. A giant money hole machine just proved a near-limitless. We hear this all the time. Of course, this is nonsense. The last one was 1/300 millionth of a second or something. They thought they seen a little spark. I said, "You sure it wasn't static electricity?" It was 3. Because the amount of energy they put into it, you can power half the planet for 4 days. A giant donut-shaped machine just proved a near-limitless power. It's just so hard for me to cover stories on fusion these days because it's like small modular reactors. Come back when you got something that works. If everybody on the planet flicks their fingers at the same time, It's enough energy to power my left. Never mind. There's no silver bullet to the climate crisis. Yes, there is. You have to contain all nuclear waste because it's all splitting the atoms into the environment, heating up the planet. But nuclear fusion may be the closest thing. Well, it's absurd to suggest it, because these are all private corporations. They got to sell it to the gullible. This makes an attractive option as the world transitions away from fossil fuel driving climate change. And James Hansen was the father of climate change, right? That got jacked by United Nations, 193 militaries, and weaponized against the population. Fossil fuels driving climate change. Sustained, which is climate change is causing climate change. Data, which is terrible. Climate change is causing climate change. And here's climate change. It's a model from France of Fukushima radioactive death plume strangling the planet. And it pulses energy every second like some mad superhero. So, like, there's so many of these models on different isotopes. This one is only 16 days. Think about that. Sustained fusion energy over 5 seconds. Amazing. But if they leave it any more than that, the magnets will overheat. And then they got to go to war against a country to get some more minerals to make another one. Sustained fusion energy over 5 seconds on December 21st last year. They've been drunk, celebrating and partying ever since. This is why we're just hearing about it now. And have you ever heard these people that work on these projects doing lectures or presentations at universities? You're like, oh my God, that's a child. 5 seconds is the limit the machine can sustain the power before magnets melt. A magnetic field, and they had to create the biggest magnet on the entire planet. It's just absurd. They got to heat everything at 150 million degrees Celsius. They can't even contain a reactor at 2,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. A magnetic field is required to contain the high temperatures needed to carry out the fusion process, which can be as high as 150 million, give or take a couple of degrees Celsius. And Eurofusion, a private corporation that includes 4,800, now this is the important part of the story, 4,800 experts on something that don't exist, students and staffs from across Europe. Now, if you took all that brain power and put it to work to solve some of the problems we actually got, we wouldn't need fusion, would we? Hang on, I'll tell you what I'm talking about here now. Wait for it. There it is. Oh yeah. Here we go. So take 4,800 privileged white kids from degenerate backgrounds, and you got them to solve the startup pump for compressed air and wind storage, which is, by the way, here's a model, it's already solved. Now, to a fusion scientist, they're like, come on, Dana, you can't expect people to come up with a solution like that. But hear me out, maybe, just maybe, I got a point to make. So you're going to dig big tunnels down into the ground, and you can look at mine shafts, and they're similar. Really similar. And you're going to take excess energy from wind and solar. Now wait for it. Wait. And you got to pump air down in the ground. You got to develop pumps and you got to develop compressors. I know. This is not off-the-shelf technology, Dana. And you can store energy down there from when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing. But wait. Give me a second. You're going to like this. We've been at this a long time. So then you're going to also have pumped hydro. And now this can be recirculating heavy mineral water. I got a diagram for you, because I know without the diagram it doesn't exist. You're going to pump water up a hill with excess energy. So you got compressed air, pumped storage, and pumped hydro. But also, because there's storage, then to back up the storage, you can use geothermal and tidal energy, because you can predict tidal 300 years into the future, and you can predict geothermal a couple of million years into the future. All right, are you with me? Who's with me? Are you with me? Who's with me? So pumped hydro, compressed air with wind and solar or any other renewable where you can get energy, backed up by continuous supply, better than nuclear, better than oil, coal, gas, with no emissions, called geothermal and tidal zone power. So, right, you know what I'm saying, right? There's a solution if you're looking. So if you took 4,800 experts and try to come up with a solution like that and this, and get the kinks out of it, then we wouldn't be in an issue, would we? No, you're too good for that. We don't want solutions, we want fantasies, Dana. The kids that are working, the 4,800 scientists that are working on this have no pressure, because no one expects them to come up with a solution, including the investors. It's a perfect Ponzi scam. Experts say the results prove the nuclear fusion is possible. So shut up. And no longer a pipe dream solution for you guessed it, climate solution, which is caused by radiation from nuclear emissions from fuel pools, nuclear testing, nuclear dumping. Remember, they dumped the radiation in the ocean for over 30 years straight. Even when, let's do Yucca Mountain, let's dump it in the ocean. The results are promising, but mastering nuclear fusion as an everyday energy source is still likely a long way off. And the most recent report from the crazies, the actual crazy United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So, United Nations, which is just a corporation but happens to have 193 militaries, has infested everybody's countries. And they're not looking for solutions. They're looking to take over the sovereignty of all the planet. And obviously the fusion industry is not serious, because they're quoting this creep, the IPCC. Japan's traditional sake makers preserve centuries-old distilling methods. Yep. Sake brewery, based in the Fukushima castle town of Nihonmatsu. And so if you look up United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, the average absorbed doses to the red bone marrows for adults in the first year. If you look at that second line over there, that line is the average disposition of just gamma, not beta or alpha or neutron, but just gamma in the soil per square meter. If you look up Nihonmatsu City, it's actually 196,000 atomic disintegrations per minute per square meter. You know, where they got their sake to. Based in the Fukushima castle town of radioactive wasteland. Japan's national drink is growing in popularity in Europe and across many exports are mass-produced. Frightening, isn't it? Was served at the official dinner for the wives of the G7 leaders, Dana, in 2008 summit, Dana. First off, you realize who the G7 is, right? They're the Bilderbergers' little lapdog. And these people are generally good people. Unfortunately, they're in a nuclear wasteland, and they were convinced by academics and scientists that nuclear is like a banana and a potato chip, when it's complete opposite, obviously. And sake is trending in Germany, with around 10% of the brew's 900 kiloliters annual output going abroad, primarily to China, the United States, and increasingly Europe, including Germany, are being radioactive. Oh my goodness, Taiwan. I guess it'll be a few weeks before this finally. So what they done with the story originally was a couple of weeks ago they started putting out rumors that Taiwan was going to lift food import restrictions against the nuclear wasteland in Japan. And of course, we all said, nah, they won't do that. Nobody's that crazy except for Canada and Europe and America and all the other countries. And so they're one of the last holdouts. And 93% of the school, local food used by... Now, they put that in the headline for a reason, because that's actually not what's going on. I also got 2 people today that says YouTube unsubscribed them from me. Look at that. 2 people in one day, which is actually not unusual over the last number of months. However, it's usually one a day or so that people tell me they were unsubscribed. However, some parents are concerned, and it's never the same one twice, I noticed, so that's kind of good, is it? However, some parents are concerned that schools would use food produced from the 5 Japanese prefectures as ingredients, and you can guarantee it. It's guaranteed, baby. Chen told reporters on the sidelines of a conference that 93% of the school lunches used ingredients of premium agricultural food that meets Taiwan's certified agricultural standards. That's not what she asked you. She asked you, was it from Fukushima? So why not just say yeah or no? Because that's how he said yeah, by a long-winded reply. These mechanisms are to ensure that more than 3,000 elementary schools and junior high schools in Taiwan use healthy and fresh domestically produced ingredients in lunches. Domestically produced. So I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But he reiterated that the government has implemented a series of mechanisms for inspecting food imported from the 5 Japanese prefectures. One of them is right by Tokyo. And Tokyo was brutalized with radiation all the way past Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Aside from proof of origins and radiation inspection certifications, products imported from the 5 prefectures were subject to inspections batch by batch at the border by the same goblins who spammed the internet after the nuclear meltdown from Taiwan for several years, that are now graduated from the universities. The nuclear universities in Taiwan had over 2,000 of their students spam the internet for several years after the nuclear meltdown to downplay it. That, to me, is revolting. Inspection, and so every university on the planet, the first thing it teaches the students is you got to get out there and defend nuclear. Here's the lies, here's the propaganda, get out there and spread it everywhere. It's bizarre. It's like, what? It seems surreal, it seems impossible, but it's simply, that's just the way the industry works. Inspection results would be published daily. So they're trying to get ahead of any blowback whatsoever. The nation's 6 laboratories equipped to inspect residual radiation. Well, see, calling it residual, there is no such thing as residual radiation because there's no safe level of radiation. And you're only checking for gamma, which is why we have a poll tonight, by the way. They're only checking for gamma, like cesium and iodines. So should they also check for beta, strontiums, and americiums, and neptuniums, and plutoniums, and uraniums? And we got 30 votes, 97% said hell yeah. Booyah, man. Sure they should. Once Taiwan allows the entry of food products from 5 prefectures, it's all over for Taiwan. Heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline is common for everybody. Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, diabetes and Down syndrome, it's going to be normal. If you don't got it in your first couple of kids, there's something wrong with you. You got to eat more Japanese food. That'll fix it. Once Taiwan allows the entry of food products, the number of Japanese food products to be inspected annually would only increase to about 20,000 from 17,000. The people doing the inspection is the nuclear industry. They're not going to say the food is dangerous. The radiation maximum levels of iodine 131, cesium 134, cesium 137 is supposed to be, in general food products, are 10 to 100 becquerels per kilogram, which means over 6 months or a year you can have thousands and thousands of fission products sequestered in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, which means every day you're going to bioaccumulate more. So you can't get more potassium or magnesium or iron or the normal emitters that your body, or not emitters, but the normal elements. Your body regulates it. It's called homeostasis. It regulates it like a furnace regulates the temperature of your homes, or cruise control regulates the speed of your vehicle. It does it automatically. But man-made anthropogenic isotopes, they sequester in your body. Your body that can't regulate them, they're foreign. So everyone that ends up in your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, and which means you have less red blood cells and more white blood cells, which means your immune system is compromised, more susceptible to pathogens and viruses and illnesses that were normally harmless, benign, and innocuous. And this is bioaccumulating all day, every day. So every day you got less red blood cells and more white blood cells. And then they got leukemia, and then it radiates you and get rid of you. Reader's letter. England is grown politically irrelevant. Boris Johnson just removed all restrictions in order to save himself, removed all restrictions for the what did he call it? Corona fabricated pandemic. And so did 8 other countries, including them 8 countries like Ireland, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Spain, and another one just today I seen was Canada's Alberta's about to, or did remove all restrictions on Monday. So now we're seeing a chain reaction of countries pulling out of it, saying to hell with it. They promoted the introduction of small nuclear power stations, which he says could provide electricity for 60 years. Regrettably, that's not all they will produce. Like all nuclear reactors, they will produce deadly radioactive waste, which will remain lethal for millions of years. And we don't have a clue how to safely store and manage the waste. No, it's all still splitting the atoms into the environment. Each atom lives for millions of years is the best way to look at it. And it's pulsing energy every second. And we should not be considering adding to that lethal and expensive problem, which is, hurrah, baby. These stations would also be targets for terrorists. But the Windscale fire, aka nuclear meltdown, in 1957, he hit for 55 years. 3 Mile Island, which 2 million people got irradiated, and they claimed it was equal to watching color television for an extra year. Try wrapping your mind around that one. But Santa Susana happened in 1959, meltdown, still ongoing, a sodium reactor. And that had allegedly released 460 times more radiation than 3 Mile Island. And 3 Mile Island was Arnie Gunnis and Lake Barrett boiled off millions of gallons into the communities for 2 years after. Arnie Gunnison used to send people into 3 Mile Island. These were day workers for 3 minutes. And they weren't allowed to go on a nuclear site ever again. So they would have died shortly after, those kinds of people. Because when you get a brutal dose that only gives you 3 minutes, you're exposed to fuel rods. So your organs start melting, and then you die. Shows it doesn't need terrorists. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl explosion, Fukushima disaster, which put an end to the building of nuclear power plants in Japan. And of course, they shut down 54 nuclear power plants. None of those employees, and you're talking thousands of employees for each nuclear power plant, to shut down 54. None of them would go to work at Fukushima. Shows it doesn't need terrorists to turn nuclear powers. Well, nuclear power stations are tools of mass destruction because the fuel pools are hemorrhaging the same atoms as you would normally use to power a home. And how many atoms does it take to boil a glass of water? I'll give you an idea. You can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. But you distribute that into 2 million insects or birds, that's 2 million tumors. But that still can't boil my glass of water. So how many atoms do they produce every day to boil power for 1 million homes? And then each couple of years you're getting that amount put into the fuel pool. It's still producing the same atoms for 1 million homes, except it goes up the stacks all day long because you boil off 120,000 liters in the fuel pool each day that are saturated each liter with trillions of atoms, anthropogenic man-made atoms that are liberated back into the environment and are now looking for insects, birds, mammals, and animals to infest. Institute demos how food is scanned for radiation. This is really shocking. They use a hand scanner to check the outside of it. The Atomic Energy Council, okay, so right away then you kind of lose all faith, says Taiwan has sufficient inspection capacity and then claims they need more employees in response to worries after the government announced it would allow food imports from 5 Japanese prefectures affected by the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, not disaster. It should be saying rather nuclear meltdowns. Check it by scanning. Handheld radiation detector is used to scan the outer packaging of the food samples. Once it's confirmed there is no contamination, the package is placed inside a machine, and now you can place it inside the machine. So the machine only tests for gamma, iodine-131, cesium-134, cesium-137. So they're not checking it. Right? They're simply not being honest. If you're not going to check for beta alpha neutrons, and you can't check for some of them when it's inside packaging like that, that's not how you check it, right? What you would do is you take it out of the package, you dehydrate it, you would ash it, which is like incinerating it, and then you would sniff the air for isotopes. That's how you check it. This is not checking it. This is, look how fancy. Look over here, shuffle the cuts around. Which one is the ping pong ball under? That's what they're doing there. Look. It's outrageous. They're only checking for just a couple of gamma. There's many other really dangerous gammas they should be checking for. It's really something, isn't it? The machine is located at the Atomic Energy Council, for goodness sakes. The same people that tasked the universities with propaganding the internet for several years after Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. They had children out there, going out there and fight on the internet or you're not going to pass. The Institute of Nuclear Energy Research currently handles the majority of testing. In other words, there's no testing. City Mayor Chang Wang-Satang said his city has one rapid testing machine for food, and there is no such thing as a rapid test. You got to test it, you got to do it right. This is not something you're supposed to hurry because it's, food. They may obtain more to help with all the testing, or they may not. Depends if you're looking. EWG urges Biden to reject the electric utilities executives' call for more nuclear power subsidies and clean energy agenda. Right, well, you can't have nuclear and 8 million species can't coexist. Finding common ground on nuclear energy and waste. And you notice a sign down in the ground? Macron to unveil plans for building French nuclear plants. That's reassuring. Why did you wait till the end of the life of your 56 nuclear power plants before you decide to build more? It's absurd. French outgoing president, I might add, will outline plans Thursday to build nuclear reactors as part of the country's goal to become carbon neutral. Well, nuclear power is the most carbon-intensive thing in human history. Hang on, I'll give you a quick explanation. Of course, there's no such thing as a quick explanation. Let's do it anyway. I got a pretty good handle on it. Sometimes. Well, first off, the biggest polluter on the planet is container ships. So one container ship is more pollution than 50 million cars, and 15 of them produce more pollution than all the cars in the world, the 760 million cars in the world. There's 90,000 ships on the ocean at any given time. So when you scale it up, it's around 42 trillion people with automobiles, animosity equivalent, on the planet as we speak because of these ships. These ships are the biggest polluters on the planet. Not your tin cans, not your pop bottles, not your cardboards. I know, that's depressing. Where are we to? There we are. Now, the federal government now proposes to pile up tons of deadly radioactive waste on the surface of the world's largest. Let me go back. Governor Abbott asked court to keep nuclear fuel storage out of the Permian Basin. The federal government now proposes to pile up tons of deadly radioactive waste on the surface of the world's largest producing oil field at a private storage facility in West Texas, where it's going to be splitting the atoms directly into the atmosphere, assuring the extinction of the species. Calling this proposal a strategic blunder that runs afoul of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, the Atomic Energy Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the National Environmental Policy Act. Yeah, but it's nuclear. They don't care. What are they going to do? Get a $50,000 fine again? Sadness is Somerset Nuclear Power Station nears closures. And you know what's so sad about this? There'll be a decrease in infant mortality right away. These are death machines, cancer factories, and disease factories because they're still splitting the atom 24 hours a day. When you close down a nuclear power plant, you don't close down the fission of the fuel that's on site, and you can't let it build up because it's a very volatile fuel. And what happens if you let it build up in your building, it'll displace the oxygen in the building. But when you introduce oxygen into the building after that, that'll actually cause it to detonate. Because, it's carbon-free, right? So carbon-free kills all the carbon life on the planet. And then the planet is carbon-free. Sadness, really? Justice signs built-in nuclear power ban. Justice. And they said, no, well, this is just so they know we're open for business. Not that we want nuclear, but we want to be open for business. But why do you need to be open for business if you don't want nuclear? Coal-dependent West Virginia eliminates the ban that the county estate fought for in the first place. Right, so the nuclear industry gets someone in the position of power and they go, eh. Even though people worked for like 10 years to get it banned, nuclear industry put somebody in, and then the nuclear industry, he ain't doing jack. I mean, the Department of Energy is paying for Bill Gates' experimental reactor because the other ones are stupid, obviously. Nuclear energy rises to the net zero challenge. And net zero was Miles Allen. Yeah, Miles Allen. He's the guy who kind of turned net zero. And then here's the father of global warming. Oh, and BP Oil. BP Oil was the father of climate change or carbon footprint. The idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign from a fossil fuel company in 2005. Oh, and how do we get your carbon footprint down? I don't know, but it doesn't sound like any fun to me. Oh, to be you. An International Energy Agency, the International Energy Agency, not the IAEA, but the International Energy Agency, has repeatedly warned the world will never reach its climate goal without nuclear. Actually, nuclear power advocates quote erroneous summary of the UN report on climate change. Nuclear power is not a technical necessity, it's said, but a matter of choice. But hey, it's Bill Gates, so they're going to use that. No. They said it can't be nuclear, Dana. No, that's not what they said at all. I read the report. Okay, all right. Ironic that extreme heat in a nuclear reactor might be the thing that saves us from extreme heat across the planet. Oh, yeah. Totally. Well, here's some extreme heat from nuclear. It's all across the planet. By the way, this is a 19-day model. And at this point, this 19 days, it covers the whole planet. Radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second. Heating up your planet and killing all your species and irradiating them at the same time. 2 dead birds with 1 stone, or 2 million, or 2 billion. Nuclear scientists just got 1 step closer to saving us from climate catastrophe. So, you can give these people all the money on the planet. Like, if everybody on the planet emptied their pockets, went down to the bank and said, here, send it over to the fusion guys, they still can't get it to work. West Virginia Manufacturers Association praises nuclear ban repeal. What did they got her friggin' faced her for? She didn't write the article. Is the United States trying to fight and win nuclear wars? Well, it already won nuclear wars. Right. So all the nuclear testing was nuclear wars. Hell, Bravo testing the Bikini Atoll, where, by the way, there's 1 million square kilometers that are still highly radioactive. According to a 2019 study, anyway, if you can believe that stuff. Is the United States trying to fight and win nuclear wars? The Castle Bravo was equal to 2 countries firing 500 Hiroshima nuclear weapons at the same spot. It's the equivalent of 100 or 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off, Hiroshima nuclear, 15 kiloton nuclear weapons going off at the same time. So the radioactive fallout is the same. So when they've done all this nuclear testing worldwide, you can trace the decline of the species in humanity and sex ratios all the way back to that point in time. EDF, which is France government, announces plan to acquire General Electric's turbine unit in France because they're planning on building 14 reactors. But they go bust on everything they do, right? They literally go bust on everything they do. They have to get bailed out of everything they touch. And everything they touch usually needs to be repaired within 3 or 4 years because of the blunder cluster that they make. A team of nuclear experts is to visit the wrecked Fukushima plant to check the water release. About time, 11 years. They won't let anybody independent check the water in the tanks. Because, they got nothing to hide. And so the team that you're talking about is the International Atomic Energy Agency. That's not their job. They don't check radiation and stuff. They're promoters of nuclear. They're the United Nations, for goodness sakes. They shouldn't even exist. No nuclear fusion experiment. Well, they're just a corporation. No nuclear fusion experiment produces next to nothing. Well, when you look at the amount of energy they put into it, it's easy to call this residual energy left over. So it works this way. If I put a hot poker in a fire pit, and I take it out and lay it on the ground for a couple of moments, and pick it up and touch you with it, do you think it's going to hurt? That's residual. That's basically what they're talking about. So if they're heating it up to 150,000 degrees, I'm only heating it up a couple of hundred. So there's going to be residual, right? Not only that, you're going to create a lot of static electricity when you're doing stuff like this. But hey, who am I to say anything? These are experts, and they'll come up with a solution within a couple of 100 years, I'm pretty sure. It won't be them, of course. They'll be long gone. Nuclear fusion is still not possible on Earth. Oh, you just broke all kinds of weirdos' hearts. And has a massive amount of radioactive energy. Huh. It's time to all go visit Chernobyl and celebrate. If you're a nuclear scientist, head down to Chernobyl. We got free apartments. You can party. Go down and party. Nuclear plant maintenance in Finland benefited from joint development. What are you hiding your face for? What did you do now? Oh, God. World Nuclear News, a.k.a. Human-hating, species-hating. Never mind. You know what I was going to say. Completion of MBIR reactor brought forward. Of the Russians. So they're commies now, World Nuclear News. They're always sucking up to Putin. You ever notice that? We are working ahead of schedule, says Rostatom, Director for Capital Investments. They're loathsome people. Creatures, I should call them. Ah, yes, my favorite story today. 5 Russian nuclear specialists die in Bangladesh. Oh, gee, my heart's broken. It's just broken. Oh, I'm broken-hearted here tonight. It's just a terrible. Couldn't happen to nicer people. In Bangladesh, the police launched an investigation into the death of 5 Russian nuclear experts. I'll never get sick of saying that. Who died one after another in just a few days. Yeah, I'm heartbroken. I'm so sad. I can't have anybody looking at my face here. Look at your carbon-free plant. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? There's no carbon there, Dana. Outside of the most precious resources on the planet, there's no carbon there. Look at this one. Go from what the hell to what the hell. Russia submarine with 160 nukes on board surfaces off the United States coast as there's postulating of a war in Ukraine. 160 nukes on a stupid submarine. Submarines are the stupidest thing in the world. Russian submarine with 160 nukes. You got to be really low IQ to work on these things. Yeah, we're going to put you in a hole, stick you in the ocean. You're not allowed to do anything. Just go out and look pretty. Russian submarine with 160 nukes off the coastline of the United States accidentally surfaces. Oh yeah, total accident. A submarine of this class is capable of destroying most of the territories of the United States of America in minutes. What do you think is going to happen then? Well, no one's going to be cashing checks anymore, Dana. That's for sure. UK regulator rules Chinese nuclear reactor design safe and secure and clean. The Hulalong 1 is one of the world's most modern reactors, which is what they said about Fukushima when it was built, by the way, and Chernobyl. Nuclear core complex comes into focus. So the nuclear core complex is the gatekeeper for traffic in and out of the cells. And nuclear destroys everything with replicating cells. Nuclear energy share in power generation to be increased, says India. Share of nuclear energy in the total electric generation in the country's remained around 3 to 3.5% since 2014. Yeah. Iran, of course, India arrested 9,000 protesters of a nuclear power plant in 2011 after Fukushima melted down and charged them with sedition. They still haven't been to court yet, and they're not allowed to do anything until they go to court. Iran is weeks from having enough material for a nuclear bomb. We've showed that headline, well, not that one, but the same. It is that headline, but a different newspaper, every week for several years now. It's just weeks away. We got a bomb from Iran. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind. Hey, I got a clip that'll help you appreciate that. You don't want to miss this one. Meet Patrick Clausen. Here, Patrick. He's from the Washington Institute think tank, aka Military Industrial Complex. He's like United Nations Military Industrial Complex. And like Iran, he wants to get the war with Iran. He thinks it's really hard. How do we get the war with Iran? He actually says that.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran.
So let me play that one more. It's very hard to see how the President of the United States can get us to war with Iran.
And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
Let me play that last part again. It would be best if somebody else started the war.
Into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
It would be best if somebody else started the war. That's what Dana Nasana was talking about a few days ago in the background. It's like The Simpsons, isn't it? Boris Johnson, Green Revolution is falling apart as nuclear is expensive and not viable. There are various reasons why I, along with Greens, don't support nuclear power. The biggest one at the moment is too expensive, too slow to tackle climate change, and it's killing all the species on the planet. New book explores theater of nuclear science. Theater of nuclear science. I haven't read the book, so I got no input, really. Outside of, I got no idea what's going on. An assistant professor of theater at Susquehanna University recently published a theater of nuclear science weapon power and the scientists behind it all, intended for scholars and graduate students. And it came apparently from some presentation that she had gave. She ended up with a book deal. So I can't get a book deal for some reason, but she can. France plans 14 new nuclear reactors by 2050. Now, if anybody knows anything about France's nuclear industry, you got better chances of getting hit by a Soviet satellite in the next 3 seconds than they have of completing 14 reactors anywhere in the future. But, by 2026, they expect to be 4,800 gigawatts of renewable energies on the planet, which is just 4 or 5 years. That's equal to 5,500 nuclear power plants worth of renewable energies. Why would you bother with nuclear, see? Government Abbott fights back against high-level nuclear waste coming to Texas. And this is what they want. We see this all year after year. We see this constantly all year long, right? Where they want to put it somewhere where they know for sure there's going to be opposition. So they'll fight with them. Come on, you got to let us do it. Like, no, we can't do it. No. Well, we're going to rally. That's okay. We'll have a counter rally. And they'll exhaust all avenues. But they know ultimately in the end, it won't go there. That's the point of what they're doing. They want the radioactive waste to continue splitting the atom into the environment. And I haven't worked out exactly why that's so, but the only thing they're going to get out of that is to exterminate all the species in increments. And now, 75 years later, we are at the precipice of this extinction event, which was excelled by the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. Like the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which is a conglomerate of the producers of the waste in the first place here in Canada, are in charge of the waste. This is the scariest thing imaginable. Whereas the United States is the government, right? At least the administration is changing regularly. But with the waste management, it's the same old scumbags for a million years. Their children will have the jobs next. North Korea builds a nuclear missile base near China's border. It's not like China's enemies with them. EU has failed to create the gold standard for green finance, Spain says. And they have, right? Failed to impose the gold standard and classified spending on gas and nuclear energy as sustainable is greenwashing on a terrible scale. And it defeats, right, the noble concept of a taxonomy where you would only finance true, sustainable, renewable, future appreciated energies. What's the point of having that system when you're going to take the money that people generally thought was going to be, and because it's credit for your taxes, there's a big incentive to invest, but that's going to go right back into dirty, despicable, planet-killing genocide, ecocide, omnicide, nuclear. It's evil. It's insidiously moralist. Russia taunts the West with huge military drills. Oh, quite, yeah, totally. Come and get it. And this dictator, like, this is how many generations he's been there? He changed the law so you can't get rid of him, right? He's a dictator. Power hungry, kooky. And both of his parents worked for Stalin. His dad was a military, his mom was a medical. And so he grew up in the bowels of hell, but he was privileged, right? And he was conditioned to be desensitized of reality. And then to take someone like that and put them in positions where they control an entire country, your country can't come to fruition when you have a pinhead like that in charge. Hints at a nuclear war if NATO attacks amid Ukraine crisis. Really? Nuclear war? Well, then give him his nuclear war. Get on with it. Just make sure you blow up Japan first. Carbon-free power project moves ahead on small modular reactors, small nuclear reactors. And so, carbon-free project, CFPP, I keep every time it shows up, I just like groan. Because remember when he started up a couple of years ago, carbon-free project, and it's nuclear. So the nuclear industry is just the gobblish, strangest, most bizarre creatures I've ever. There's nothing like them out there anywhere on the planet. If you met these people anywhere, you would know there's something really weird, there's something really off about them as soon as you meet them. Until you found out they work for the nuclear industry in some capacity. Department of Energy official and Department of Energy and official should never go together, by the way. To provide update on push to find home for nuclear waste. 75 years. Same narrative. Yeah, we're getting right on it. Have a nice day. Don't leave your number. I got it on the screen here. Have a nice day. Government agency planning a nuclear waste dump for United Kingdom. And they call it, instead of calling it by its name, they call it Skegross. So it's really difficult because it was on a map, see? That's how this came to light. So they put that there because of contempt. And what that meant now was that was a candidate. They have contempt, and which meant now they would be happy to put their nuclear there. It made the year in a map produced for a radioactive waste dump. In the old days, they just dug holes and dumped it in the ground. And then now they'll fight for 1,000 years before they dig a hole and put it in the ground. The government agency apologized for misspelling the gross on a map used to demonstrate the latest project. These are crazies. Nuclear missiles can save the world. Oh, yeah. Well, we can stop a meteorite from hitting the planet. And the problem is that you can't really, right? You can't hit something coming in at 30,000 miles a second. NASA plans to crash the space station into the so-called spacecraft cemetery in 2031. They just got an extension on the International Space Station. Now, if you know anything about these facilities, they're made with toxic material and all the precious metals they can get on the planet at the time. And everything has to be tripled, inspected, etc., etc. And so what they do is Point Nemo in the South Pacific Ocean, also considered the most remote place on Earth, which is, when the nuclear testing, they went out and destroyed all the beautiful oases in the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean with nuclear weapons. They're like, man, this place is amazing. It's beautiful. Hey, let's blow up nuclear weapons here and wreck it. For every generation for 1,000,000 years. So they send these spacecrafts down into a remote area, and this is very toxic and polluting stuff, right? They call it decommission, but falling out of space. It's not decommission. It's the wrong word. Call it unwanted trash or something. Oh, and what goes up, according to Sharon, in an article she wrote for Popular Science. Now, if anybody knows anything about Popular Science, these are another lobbying group that bought up Popular Media. There she is. $200 billion you're never going to get back. And no benefit to you, only how quickly can we exterminate humans. 2 satellites nearly collided in 2020. It's just a matter of time. When that happens, then you're got millions of little pieces going in every direction in a cascade effect. They got like 500,000 objects already up there because of collisions. The people that are in charge are not in charge at all. People are comparing the Beijing Winter Olympics to the Simpsons. And God help us, the Simpsons is used. So to the left is the Olympics, and to the right is Springfield Nuclear Power Plant. Homer Simpson. So there's a lot of people got indoctrinated by the Homer Simpsons. It was pretty funny stuff, right? But what it was meant to make generations of people complacent about nuclear and to brainwash them. Same as Spider-Man and the Hulk was meant to brainwash your loved ones in increments into complacency. A laboratory in Oxford, UK is making a breakthrough in nuclear fusion power generation. So there's endless medias in that story. So the only way that happens, it's a big public relation event. A lot of money, right? And they're obviously looking for investors. Troubling times for nuclear disarmament movement. 2022 will be an important year for nuclear disarmament states that signed the United Nations, who have taken over our planet like a plague. And nobody's allowed to do anything unless United Nations says, kiss my ring, and you can do it. The Green Brief and EU taxonomy fairy tale. Right, so they really dropped the ball. The EU created this taxonomy stoic organization to trick and deceive and manipulate everybody into investing back into dirty, genocidal, omnicidal nuclear. They worked so long, so hard to decide what belonged in the great green list of investments. Once upon a time, in a strange land near Brussels, the great leaders of the European Commission came together to decide what investments should be made to save their world from the great monster, climate change. Led by the High Queen of 27 lands, they worked long and hard to decide what belonged in their great green list of investments. Finally, on the eve of the new year, which was 6 weeks ago, a draft proclamation was sent to the leaders of 27 lands, as well as a council of wise people known as the Platform on Sustainable Finance. And many suspected some of the 27 leaders, those who had not made allegiance with gas and nuclear, had the ear of the High Queen more than others. And they feared the scientific basis of the green list would be lost forever, and they weren't disappointed. After a month of debating, the commission leaders gathered once more, and on the second day of the second month, they made their decision and decreed that nuclear could be counted as a green investment. And they said, while nuclear was not perfect, they could make a contribution to Europe's climate goals by replacing more damaging coal. And of course, all nuclear power plants need two external power plants, like coal, oil, and gas, usually coal because it's cheap, to power the massive nuclear sites. It's strict, like all of this stuff is like the BP oil advertising campaign of carbon footprint, which United Nations like, yep, we want that. And Miles Allen with net zero, yeah, we'll take that. And James Hansen with climate change, oh, we need that. We'll beat the whole planet up with that, and we'll take over this planet. My God, the lies never stop in nuclear is the fun part of the story, isn't it? A large amount of residue was found at the bottom of the vessel of Reactor 1. First off, you can't get close to Reactor 1. You can't get in the vessel and check it. And equipment has this is high energy emissions. And it destroys circuit boards and electronics, etc. And it destroys everything the closer you get to it. This is why they keep it in. Now, when the Reactor 1 caught fire and detonated, not blew up, but detonated, which is way worse. And integrity of the building was immediately lost. There was no way, because 680 kilometers of coastline was washed out to sea. There was no infrastructure, aka power. There was no pumps. So once it started melting down, gases are created known as hydrogen. It's caused by the meltdown coming in contact with water, creates hydrogen. And the building burned continuously for several days. So the reactors actually went China syndrome. They left the building and went down into the earth. Same thing with the fuel pool. It detonated and sprayed raw fuel rods and pellets all over the site. But it also melted down a section of it too, along with the 800 tons in the reactor. Just a lot of this burnt off for days, but that's what a chain reaction is, continuously consuming steel, metal, and rebar and everything else. It's atomizing and aerosoling, ionizing and radiating it, and that looks like fog. It's an emission, right? Originally, but we're talking about an absurd amount. This chain reaction go on for thousands of years. It's an absurd amount of radiation we're talking about. You can't get there and check it. You can't quantify it. Cameras are not going to work in this environment. That kind of knowledge is well known, but that doesn't stop the media from propaganda. And calling it Tokyo Electric Power when they don't even exist is the strangest thing imaginable, because it was nationalized because they were bankrupt immediately. That the internal investigation nuclear reactor vessel Unit 1, which is completely gone, is not in the building at all, which began on February 8th, showed there was a large amount of residue at the bottom of the ponding. The ponding doesn't exist. I mean, the evidence is the evidence. And so this is propaganda, what you're seeing there. Ukraine would have nothing to worry about if it had maintained its nuclear force. Ukraine would have nothing to worry about if it kept its nuclear weapons. Right, so this was the major American media, of course. It's nonsense. It's 100% nonsense. Parsing Ontario's new clean energy credit initiative. Ontario government's new environmental initiative, Clean Energy Credit Registry, which could create new opportunities for businesses to meet the environment. This is the nuclear industry we're talking about. Bruce Power and the rest of them are going to scoop all of that. Bruce Power just scooped $4 billion for storage, not for renewables, but for nuclear storage, like as in pumped hydro storage. The whole story is absurd. It's just an incredible betrayal. Canada is like literally the worst country to live in. Department of Energy nuclear physics program strategy includes neutrinoless double beta decay experiment at the Wright Lab. Again, so what they got is the Cupids is an upgrade to the cryogenics underground laboratory for rare events. The largest operating biometric experiment, which is located in Italy. And so it's deep, deep, deep underground, and neutrinos will go right through the earth, right? They down way under the ground where they hope there's no other disturbances, are able to spot neutrinos coming through where they have large containments of water there to help slow down the neutrinos so they can spot it. And they've put just absurd money and energy and effort and brain power into this, but they're not putting no power into coming up with solutions for real stuff. Every time you get a bunch of smart people, they scoop them up and they disappear them doing stuff like this instead of coming up with solutions. Oh my goodness. The Canadian nuclear laboratories. So this story is crazy. So they admit in this story at Chalk River National Laboratories that which is now owned and run by Americans for some reason, it is a crucial year for Canadian nuclear laboratories / American, with the pending hearing on near-surface disposal facility, which is a fancy word. What they want to do, they have 70 years of nuclear waste. They basically created nothing there, only nuclear waste, and they admit that in this article. And what they want to do, they don't want to transport it to a repository. They want to encase it right where it's to. And what they call grout, right? It's a special type. So it's like pouring cement over it and just walking away. It's the cheapest, quickest, dirtiest, stupidest thing you can do on top of that. It enhances protection of the river and the environment has been polluted for 70 years straight. He told the Renfield Council recently, the material is already there. It is in our 40-year-old building. It's in our soils. He was at the council. Now, this was the Joe McBeatty. McBurty, is it? My apologies, Pinhead. He was at the council not only asking for support of a little tiny community, but delivering an update on the facility, which is not an update, it's a 100% propaganda, aka public relation event, including informing council of the innovative cancer therapy, which is horrifying, by the way. Studies currently underway, there are a little bit more of that coming up. Informing council of the cancer therapy. Now, you can't cure somebody with radiation, okay? For goodness sakes, don't freaking do that. Here, I'll show you what I suggest you should do. Get on over to Amazon.com, not .ca, but .com. and which is the international, right? And ordered DCA. Now, DCA reduced all tumors by 70% in the first 3 weeks. Even big hard tumors that were squatting organs. So there's no more invasive surgery. And you can get, if you look, you see like ships to Canada, if you're in Canada. And pure DCA is how I would go and do it. Pure DCA. Or pills, whatever. Now, the pills are 99.9%. They're what they call salted. They're diluted a little tiny bit. They're still fine. But the pure DCA is a powder. And you just little tiny, 1/8 of a level, no, 1/8 of a little tiny spoon 3 times a day in about this much water in a small glass. Because your body can only absorb so much at a time, right? But it was discovered to have those particular properties by a scientist in Calgary University, and he couldn't get funding to do human trials on a cancer cure. And he reduced all tumors, all human cancers rather, by 70% in the first 3 weeks, annihilated the cancer in less than 3 months. So even if you don't got cancer, it's probably best to go through a bottle of that just in case, right? Because cancer is usually diagnosed when it's too late. So why wait? People buy bottles of vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and everything else. Why not? Because DCA is just a mineral. That's all it really is. And all it does is unplate your blood, which allows your blood to naturally destroy all kinds of illnesses and pathogens and viruses in your body, including cancer. The Chalk River National Laboratory, the Canadian National Laboratory, which is an American laboratory now, of course, is at a pivotal point, dealing not only with waste from 7 decades of research, waste from 70 years of research, but also rehabilitation as it looks forward to continuing research. 70 years later, they're going to start rehabilitation. Our primary mission is environmental restoration of legacy stuff. That was a result of 70 years of incredible efforts at the world's first nuclear meltdown at Chalk River National Campus. See, it's not a campus, it's a genocide disease factory, which has benefited the entire world by polluting the entire world. It's absurd to suggest they benefit the entire world. They're a genocide machine. They make radiation for hospitals. They're actually evil. Chalk River National Laboratory plays an important role in the country with around 2,800 employee scumbags, mostly in Chalk River, Deep River, and Pembroke and Petawawa areas. These are incredible degenerates, conducting the largest and most complex remediation in Canada, spanning 3 friggin' provinces. They irradiated 3 provinces, what they're talking about. Incredibly disgusting. That's friggin' revolting. Canada's most complex remediation ever, largest and most. That tells you how much damage they got done, don't it? That is frightening. That is absolutely frightening. To restore and protect the environment after destroying the environment, provide clean energy, which is never going to be clean, and tomorrow, and improve the health of Canadians, which radiation only kills 97 out of 100 of the people who use it. And 3% is a typical misdiagnosis for cancer. This is done through conducting the largest, most complex remediation in Canada spanning 3 entire provinces. Oh, and small modular reactors demonstrations, which they don't even have, and advanced fuels, which are, in order to create that, you have to pollute the entire environment for 1 billion years. And in the last 5 years, 100 nuclear waste structures and the sites have been taken down with the land being remediated. You can't remediate land when there's nuclear waste involved. It permeates down into the water tables. It reduces risk to our public and to our workforce. It reduces risk to our precious environment, said the kooky weirdo. The current nuclear remediation process is the most complex in Canada. 70 years of just endless pollution. It takes a while because we have to do it in a very painstaking manner to protect our workforce and protect our environment. This is batshit loony stuff. The heart and soul of Chalk River National Genocide Machine has been isotope production. And this continues with work on a new isotope which targets cancer tumors with very little impact on other cells, which is what they said about every radiation human experiment they've been doing in their entire legacy. The AC-225 radioisotope program is a very exciting development in fighting cancer. Well, look, all you got to do is use DCA. You don't have to have these monsters destroying your life. They're going to murder you. They lead you directly into being murdered. He said this is being considered as a potential treatment for a number of cancers. Being considered. It's not being used, but considered. If we can save even one life and kill 1 billion, this is incredibly important. So that's one of the scariest statements you're ever going to hear. It really is, when you know how much releases into the environment they've actually perpetrated. And they rolled out all the big wigs, I noticed, for this particular story, which has got quite a few twists coming up yet. Megan Vickert, the general non-manager of waste non-management, spoke, noting the Canadian Nuclear Laboratory is viewing this as a key element of this genocide radiation in hospitals. It's a key to improving the state of our waste storage. The waste has been on site for decades, and this is dealing with that waste, she stressed. And the proposed NSFDF will protect the public and the environment in every stage of the facility, the kooky weirdo said. We are hoping for positive interventions for all our communities. Wow, so they're begging the communities. I was trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and we'll get to it. The hearing is scheduled for late May and will be held in Renfrew County. We are hoping for positive interventions from our communities. Intervention. So they're in trouble. Warden Debbie Robinson said it's not only important for the county to speak out in favor of the repository, but also municipalities. We need more than one voice from the county supporting the Chalk River National Laboratory. She said, we need 18 voices, the county and the municipalities. And so Mayor Jed Riedenwald said he had been involved in the nuclear industry for 35 years. So that's why he became the mayor, because you got to have a monster to cover up the other monster's destructive legacy. Says he'll be in support of the repository, which is not a repository. They're just going to bury everything right where it's to in grout and cement. Our council is very much behind it, he remarked. Now he's speaking for everybody. No, you do what you're told. Another mayor from Bromley says the role of nuclear remains important. So they got them all on board before they even wrote this public relation article. I cannot see there is any path addressing climate change moving forward without nuclear energy being a part of it. Really. Despite the fact that the international energy agencies said that renewables will surpass all nuclear and all fossil by 2026 in just 4 years. Maybe you should shut your pie hole, you bribe-taking scum. The fact most of the material being disposed of at the repository is already on site at Chalk River is not widely known, because they've been hiding the legacy waste for 70 years. By and large, the waste is generally what has been generated on site. If this waste is not entombed right where it stands, then it will have to be moved off site through the highways elsewhere, said the scumbag, traitor, seditionist bastard. We know we have to give back to the Canadian taxpayers, Mr. Breckerty noted. What a despicable piece of art that creature turned out to be. Near-surface disposal facility, and President and CEO Joe McBreedy. So he's in charge of, he wants to bury it, entomb it right where it's to. This is only a test. Seabrook conducts a drill on Wednesday. Seabrook Nuclear Power Station will be conducting a test of sirens. Notice that with an S, but it's actually only going to be one. In New Hampshire and Massachusetts. We'll be conducting a test of its sirens, but it's just one siren. And they're going to do it 7 a.m. in the morning. And sirens within the 10-mile emergency zone will not be activated, particularly if there's a meltdown. The drill starts at 7 a.m. And this is a big, beautiful estuary where they put their nuclear power plant. And then everything runs downhill to the ocean, where it's communities. See all the communities out there? But look at the beautiful estuary, radioactive migratory animals coming through, getting radiated and shipped off to die somewhere else. The White House approved a plan for U.S. troops in Portland to help evacuate Americans from Ukraine if Russia invades, writes the scumbag Wall Street Journal. American troops will begin setting up checkpoints, tent camps, and other temporary facilities along the Ukraine border, prepared to assist the Americans fleeing the country. U.S. officials report the troops are unauthorized to cross the border into Ukraine and are not permitted to evacuate Americans. Look, if the lobbyists who call themselves the government tells you something, you know they're going to lie. It's always a lie. The wind energy sector rejects the inclusion of non-renewable technologies in the EU green taxonomy. The green taxonomy should only be used for renewable energies. Natural gas and nuclear are not renewables. And their inclusions in the green taxonomy can cause confusion for investors, diverting funds that should be used for renewable technologies. Exactly. You can't have a renewable future if you don't use it. The Defense Post. That's the scariest thing imaginable, right? Where the defense has actually got their own website to put out propaganda. Nuclear power fast attack vessel. Well, you can't use them. What's the point of it? Virginia-class submarine Montana. Now, this is supposed to be an attack and destroy vessel. But you can't use it, because of what happens after. It employs 10,000 shipbuilders and suppliers from 50 states. It's 377 feet long, 34 feet beam and is designed to hunt and destroy missile submarines and surface ships. It's just pure fear-mongering. If the Americans got it, Russia's got to have it, China's got to have it. The Virginia-class submersibles can clip along at 28.76 miles per hour for months. So in 4 months, they can travel 81,000 miles. They can circle the planet 3 times. Because they can't do anything else. You can't use them. It's stupid. And then all the precious resources and energy and metal that goes into these could be used to make the world 1,000 times better each time. In Chernobyl ghost town, Ukraine forces trained for combat. The wild card, the entry of China has accelerated the global arms race. Right, so Russia gets a supersonic missile, everybody's got to have a supersonic missile. China gets a new submarine, everybody's got to have a new submarine. It's kind of like a rich neighborhood where one guy gets a speedboat, the neighbor across the street gets a bigger one, neighbor up the street gets a bigger one, the other neighbor up the street gets a bigger one. How many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of these aircraft carriers anyway? First old submarine to be recycled for Durnford. Wow. You know, they still have every submarine they ever built because they haven't tried to denuclearize any of their Peruvian right harassment forces Castello to set new cabinet. I'm not sure what that was all about. Iran claims to launch a $19 billion project despite sanctions. Well, they're surrounded by 49 military bases right on their borders, right, for several decades. Vast drills spotlight Russia's grip in a standoff with the... We've seen these kind of things year after year after year. This is normal. But if you create the right kind of feedback, then who profits? Well, the weapons manufacturer, the military-industrial complex, a.k.a. United Nations. On the dystopia of watching the Beaker skiing events against the backdrop of a nuclear facility at the Beijing Winter Olympics. That's a good one. Winter Olympics. Oil stalls below $90. It's better to laugh than cry. I'll cry. I cry after every show anyway. Oil stalls below $90 because they artificially inflated the price of oil to inflate the price of gas to make nuclear look good. Totally artificial inflation, right? France to invest $1.1 billion in mini nuclear reactors. First off, $1.1 billion for any nuclear is laughable. They won't even get out of bed for $1.1 billion in the nuclear industry. Is there a possible threat of a preemptive nuclear attack in Europe? Only if you're in the nuclear industry can there be. So why show pictures of people, Muslims? In comparison, for the mere suspicion of weapons of mass destruction, the U.S. attacked Iraq in 2003. So they're talking about Poland and Denmark have chemical weapons from the Baltic Sea conflict, and they're hiding it from the public. And so they're suggesting that they be threatened with nuclear weapons, so they burn them. The mere threat of a preemptive nuclear attack against Warsaw and Copenhagen might be enough to make the government stop violating international law and destroy the chemical weapons. Or we'll just blow you up like we did with Iraq. The United States, according to Fanchi, is on the verge of becoming a nuclear power. Wow, that's new. An end of restriction as COVID approaches epidemic stage. which we've seen now 8 countries and a major province in Canada just drop all restrictions. Canada's, you got the truckers movement, right? They blockaded Ottawa, and so we need other countries to do the same thing. It'll all fall at one time. Russia's unaware of Greece's plan to deploy nuclear weapons. Greece got nuclear weapons? Man, I think they're American, are they? Who knows anymore? Hey, did you forget to give me a thumbs up? You're getting a nuclear booster shot for that. I was wondering, should I make t-shirts like this? What do you think? I'll do a better job on his head placement. This man will sniff your bicycle seats because he's the head of United Nations, or the International Atomic Energy Agency. The old scumbag over there died last year, right? Thank goodness. Hopefully he's down rotting in hell as we speak. But I was thinking about making t-shirts anyway of that and this one. Well, you know me, if I'm thinking of it, I'm going to do it. Get your Fukushima chemo by eating radioactive food from a nuclear wasteland. Don't be shy. I'm not going to be shy. No show tomorrow night. We'll see everybody on Sunday. See everybody on Sunday. I never had no time off in the last 3, 4, 5 weekends. But I've been doing double duty for the last couple of weekends. And so I want to get, we had heavy snow last night. I was, perfect. I'll get out and do some research. And then around 4 a.m., I heard the rain. I got up at 5 a.m. and looked out the window. Half the snow was gone. And the rain didn't stop. It was disappointing. We got good weather, sunshine tomorrow, and sunshine on Friday. And so I'm planning on putting a quad on the trailer and heading over to the other side of the province, 100 kilometers away, and get out on the trail because a lot of the snow got washed away, right? And we got sunshine. And so try to cover 100 kilometers and do a bird count, and then repeat it the other direction on Friday. And we raised 120 last night with James Lucet, who you see in the comment all the time. So thank you, James. And that's what we're going to use the money for, to go over there, because gas is $1.80 a liter for. I can only use prime gas in the bike. Let me just do a quick shout out for everybody. Good night for everybody. Hugs for everybody. We're going to knock the poll down. We got 52 votes. So we're going to end the poll. We got a couple of people actually voted no. They shouldn't check for radiation in food. That picture is one of the most terrifying pictures imaginable if you understand nuclear. That picture should make it go like this instantly. So we'll end that. Doing that. Oh, hang on, doesn't want to end? Okay, I got it. And we'll do a shootout, quick shootout, everybody. See, Colette had said earlier that she got one of the t-shirts at my site. And so that's pretty cool. Thank you, Colette. I hope, now, they guarantee that the shirts are going to be good. You got any issues, you can send it back to him. But we want this to work the first time. Make sure you look at the front and back of the shirts, folks, before you order it, in case I made a blunder when I was creating them. I'm doing my best to double check everything the last couple of days. Go back in and go through the shirts. And all shirts should have multiple colors. Tree fruit, peace, where Andrew B, which is CFINSTR, Thinker. Good night, everybody. Albert, James Lucid. They ate the Fukushima crabs. Ew. Port Angeles, Don Vincent. Richard McCann. I'm just going to scroll down quickly. Dana Nasana. Good night, Dana. Blue Jay Outpost. I'm just doing a quick shout out to the comments section, scrolling from the top down. We'll get to the most recent comments. I got lots of things I got to pack up for the expedition tomorrow. Cody, because it's still minus temperatures. I got to take enough with me in case I don't make it out that I can survive. There's a lot going into these expeditions. But when you're going away from home where it's hard for anybody to find you, you really got to go the other extra couple of thousand yards, you know. M. Ruffle. I put my stuff on Rumble, but I never got no views. Not a single view each time. I'm just scrolling down through the names, looking for anybody I might have missed, and I always seem to miss somebody or two. We're almost through. And I read the comments each night after. There's a lot of work that goes into everything I'm doing. I'm trying to do the best I can. Marge, Vincent, hi Marge. We're almost through the comments here now. I know it's a tough subject for a lot of people, but Mr. Finnegan. Okay, we're almost through it. The Invisible Rabbit. I just try not to miss anybody, and we're just 10, 12 comments away. Alrighty. Looks good. No video tomorrow. No show tomorrow night. I'll be on the trail, hopefully 100 kilometers away from here. Going about 100 kilometers. So it'll be a very cold, miserable day. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I hear you, Colette. Thank you, honey. I appreciate everything, trust me. I'm switched on. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm switched on. Most of you folks certainly seem switched on. We're in this for the win. This is not a game. It's not a hobby. It's not a pastime. This is life and death for this planet and the future generations. It's our responsibility and it's on our watch, and we take that serious. And we've been here a very long time. We're extraordinarily honest. The first rule of what I do is honesty, and the second rule is educational program, so that people have a strong narrative to beat down the naysayers and the morons. And everybody that watches these programs are extremely well informed. Nerad, you loft. Tip of the spear, that's right. The expedition dangers are that I'm going 100 kilometers away out into the woods and driving 100 kilometers in sub-zero temperatures in adverse conditions by myself. It's very dangerous. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody else that's watching this. Hugs for you folks too. We'll see everybody on Sunday. I'll probably stream from the trail, or I'll shoot a video and upload it from the trail. If I find anything interesting, or I'll probably do it anyway. Yeah, I'm always, unfortunately, putting myself in harm's way because there's no other way I can do it, right? I go out all the time here, and it's very dangerous here for sure. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And there's links under the video at the very bottom of the description is how you can donate directly to me. There's only 2 ways to do it. And there's actually a third way now. You can buy a t-shirt. That link is at the bottom of the descriptions also. And we'll see everybody on Sunday, and maybe a short video from the trail tomorrow or Friday. Have a great night, folks. Take care.